This is the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing Show. Real stories, real success in Twin Cities real estate. Join your hosts, Adam Tafel and Tim Swierczek, as they dive into the world of Twin Cities real estate investing. Together, they share valuable insights and practical tips to help both new and seasoned investors navigate the Minneapolis-St. Paul market. With a focus on relatable stories from real people, this show will empower you with the knowledge and confidence to thrive in your investing journey. Guys, take it from here.
What's going on, Tim?
Hey, man, how's it going?
It's going all right, man. We got Sean Bloomquist today.
Yeah. Probably the most well-known hard money lender in the Twin Cities, just in terms of name recognition and longevity.
Yeah, totally. I've been kind of working around Sean for many years. I think I've written some offers with his pre-approval. We've never officially worked together. We've never officially met. So this was a great chat.
Yeah, Sean and I met many years ago in the early Twin Cities meetup days. But I haven't spent a lot of time with him or talked to him much. So it was good to get a chance to catch up.
But yeah, I mean, in this episode, we get into comping properties and just we get into the weeds a little bit on how to adjust, just like an appraiser would do. If you're looking at an ARV, get a lot into like what not to do, right? Mm-hmm. The difference between market value and appraised value. And then just, Sean's experience, having seen so many deals over the years, what works, what doesn't. And yeah, I think this is a good episode.
Right. And if anything, get ready, because when we say go, they start right into it.
Yeah, Tim was like distracted, and I got impatient. I was sick of waiting for Tim, so I just started talking to Sean. So that's why the episode starts strangely.
I was the commercial for me. I was locking loans for customers, and it's a good thing I did, because markets changed.
Just playing Candy Crush,
just like I had predicted. So yeah,
investors, if a deal gets messy, call Network Title. They can handle the BRRRR, the 1031, mixed use, commercial, whatever it takes, so you can close on time. Mentor of mine, guy who I really respect, Kirk Duckwall, says working with Network Title is kind of like having another personal assistant. That's how on the ball these people are. Network Title, complex deals made simple. Link in the show notes. Welcome to the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing Show, brought to you by Shook. Shook is the all-in-one platform to help you manage your rentals, built for real estate investors just like us. You know what I really like about Shook? My favorite thing about Shook is that they're local, Minnesota-based. How often do you make a tech decision and you actually know the guy who owns it? That guy's name is Oliver, and he's a nice guy, and I like supporting him. He has kids, he lives here. Don't support some faceless California schmucks. Support Oliver and his family. At just $5 per unit per month, I think it's totally worth checking out shookrentals.com. Book a live demo in the show notes and save 20% with our code. All right, on to the main episode.
It's like, I should have listened to you on that first deal. I'd have made $30,000 more if I would have just listened to you. I'm like, I told you, dude. Like, you didn't want to listen to me, but I'm glad in hindsight you realized it. So, yeah.
Tell me about whatever. I'm rolling now. Tim, tell me about that deal. What happened?
So it was their first deal, and they were looking at it where they needed to essentially touch everything in the property and supply everything in the property. Like one of the things they were considering doing was putting in a washer and dryer, which sounds kind of basic, but the irony is a washer and dryer, you're not getting any return on investment for it. So you're going to spend $1,000 to get nothing out of it.
You don't think that there is some intrinsic market value in, or maybe we're retracting market value to sell a home that has no washer and dryer? That's just going to turn certain people off. And so you might get at least $1 for dollar back.
So the way I look at it, and the way an appraiser would look at it, is it's more marketability than it is actual dollar value, right? If you had them in there, yes, it might be more attractive, but it isn't a necessity. It isn't something every buyer is expecting, right? Sure. Like if you walked in a kitchen and there were no appliances in the kitchen, you'd be like, what the heck is this? Like, I got to fully supply all the kitchen appliances. But a washer and dryer is just one of those things that you don't have to in order to sell the house,
sure.
Right? So it's not like you're going to spend the money and potentially get all the money back. You might get a little bit back, but why not just skip it then, right?
Yeah,
if you can save that $1,000, you save that $1,000.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, and this is the difference between appraised value and market value. Like as a real estate agent, we see market value additions and subtractions come out in the goofiest ways, right? You have some dirty windows or some broken blinds that should not affect appraised value whatsoever, but they're going to send somebody emotions, and, at a certain price point, no washer and dryer. You might have people who are offering down payment assistance,
sure,
right? They need closing costs, and so that $1,500 might be the difference between them buying or not. I get what you're saying. The appraiser and you are right in your sense, but anyways, it doesn't matter because you were
that's
right.
fine. No,
I'm picking on you for something that doesn't matter at all, right?
No, that's fine. And it's funny because now that you bring this up, it makes me think. So we've done a class on determining after repaired value on properties.
Yeah.
And how an appraiser looks at a property. Because we look at appraisals, multiple times a week. We're looking at appraisals and we're going through all the numbers that they go based on. And the one that always trips people up, and especially realtors, is bedroom count doesn't equal dollar value.
Elaborate on that.
So I will. So
this is one Kevin's been talking about for years. Sorry.
Yes, So you've heard this already. So the reason bedroom count doesn't change the overall value is because if you counted a room as a bedroom, right, and added a dollar value for it, you're essentially double dipping on the value. Because
if you're making a square footage adjustment also.
Exactly. Because it's all based on square footage adjustment in most cases.
Sure.
Right? So square footage adjustment, but then if you also add value for bedroom, you're double dipping because a bedroom can be used for anything, right?
Sure.
It could be used as an office, it could be used as a studio, it could be used as a toy room, it could be used as anything. Where a bathroom, you get square footage, but you also get a dollar value for the bathroom because it can only be used as a bathroom, right? Okay. Nobody's going to sleep in there for no reason whatsoever. So the other reason it doesn't really change the value is you could take a house and if the bedrooms were larger bedrooms and you started chopping them up, well, you could turn a 3-bedroom house into a 6-bedroom house, but you didn't gain any size.
Sure.
You just made smaller bedrooms is all you did, right? So that's something that trips people up is if you're counting square footage, finished square footage, the bedrooms don't change and add an extra value unless you are finishing square footage down in the basement or something like that, but that's still just based on the finished square feet. But the only time you would add actual value for a bedroom is on a rental property because it can command more rent. Okay.
Well, my thing is like, I agree with what you're saying. There's certainly a diminishing value to adding bedrooms.
Yep.
Real estate is so hyper specific sometimes to the submarket of the municipality, right? So like what you're saying is correct, especially in the context of teaching this ARV class. But if I take a certain type of home in a certain neighborhood, and one is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square feet, and the other is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square feet, and we could look at the data together, there is intrinsic value in that bedroom.
There's marketability value.
Sure, and marketability translates into sales price.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
That's why if you have crappy pictures, your house is going to sell for less.
That's exactly right.
But the nice pictures don't necessarily make it appraised for more.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, and also sometimes I disagree with that.
No, I get it because there is a time where you would add actual dollar value to a bedroom count, and that is if it's going from a useless house like a 1-bedroom, and you add a 2nd bedroom, or it could even be from a 2 to a 3. There could be a dollar adjustment because of that, because your buying pool is so much smaller for those other houses.
Exactly.
Right? So you would get a little bump in that. But if you go to a 3 to a 4 or a 3 to even a 5-bedroom, it's not going to change a dollar amount. It's just the square footage that's going to count on an appraisal. But I agree with you, marketability wise, all day long, because you open up your buying pool even more. Right? Yeah. So there is that chance to get more value for it, but an appraisal will not show that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's nerd out in adjustments then for a minute. So like, okay, let's just take St. Paul, median, like $450 price point, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. What is your adjustment formula for above grade square footage and below grade square footage in that context?
Oh, it's gonna depend on. I mean, it could be like you were talking earlier, so hyper focused. I mean, it could change monthly. You know,
Sure.
what the actual adjustment is going to be per square foot above grade. You know, I would say, trying to think of the most recent appraisal I looked at that would have been in this market. I mean, you're looking at probably $50 a square foot is the adjustment.
Okay.
And see, that's where another thing that people get tripped up on, because if you look at a home sale, the value, and then you divide it by all the square footage of the property, you're going to get a way different number than you would for what the adjustment is going to be for above grade and below grade.
Yeah, no one who knows what they're talking about in real estate really talks about price per square foot. I mean,
Right,
maybe it's
yeah.
maybe it's a metric that you could brag about, or maybe in certain you get to $1.5 million at certain price points. It
Yep.
might be more common.
Yep.
But yeah, you certainly don't divide and then figure out.
Well,
what your
no,
value is.
and that's how you can, exactly right. That's how you can pick out someone that is new to it or just isn't as experienced, because they go, well, the comps in this area are selling for $295 a square foot. Well, no, they're not. I mean, they are, but they're not, because that's just going on the overall square footage, not the finished square footage. So it is something that you're exactly right. You can tell if people are using that, they're maybe not as experienced.
For St. Paul homes, I say, you know, when it comes, I do a lot of small multifamily and small commercial. That's about half my business. And the other half is mostly Class A single families. To like my sphere, my friends.
Sure.
You know, a landlord client that turns into a regular client. And I typically use in St. Paul $100 a foot for above, 50 for below. And I've found, because, you know, the agent who is the best at determining ultimate sales prices in this Class A submarket in St. Paul taught me to do it that way.
Yep.
And I found, but you got to make adjustments, because it is absolutely not a surefire way. Another way that somebody taught us back in the day, Keller Williams, and maybe if you disagree with this, I'd love to hear it, but take the price per square foot, divide it by 3, use that as your first metric. And yeah, it's not perfect. It's going to vary from market to market. But I think for someone who's just getting into this and they want to learn how to analyze, and maybe they don't have access to the MLS and stuff, I think the divided by 3 metric isn't the worst thing.
Can you explain that in more detail? I'm not tracking what the benefit of the division by 3 is. So what is that again?
Yeah. So if you want to figure out the difference between a 1,500 square foot home and a 2,000 square foot home, divide the price per square foot on on whatever the comp is, that find that price per square foot is, divide that number by 3, and then multiply that number by the difference to the subject. So if the subject is 1,500, subtract that number that's been divided by 3 by 500, and because the subject is bigger, we're going to do a subtraction of that number.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that calculation before. It's a very generic way of doing it, and it can work, but it could also throw you way off depending on the neighborhood. It's always dependent on the neighborhood, right?
Yeah. I think like any rule of thumb, and I say this a lot about people using the 1% rule and other rules of thumb in investing, the rule of thumb works in a narrow band.
Yep.
And my guess is that third calculation worked perfect in St. Paul for anywhere from 1 to 10 years, right?
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like it was the metric, right? It was actually kind of thought out. And then as the market changed, it either should have been a quarter or it should have been 40%, right? And like it varies, right? It changes just because the market changes.
Sure.
So, to your point, in some neighborhoods that might work perfectly. In other ones, you'd be kind of setting yourself up for failure, right? So, yeah.
Well, and as agents, we have the benefit of, we do this so many times. I'll probably do 2 CMAs today, you know, so I really do have the benefit of figuring out what works and what doesn't, because then you see the house sell. And, you know, this is probably like 2020, 2021, the divided by 3, and then checking to make sure, you know, zooming out, seeing all the context of the market. Sure. Ideally, you're finding comps where you have to make hardly any adjustments, right?
Well, if you do it often enough, and you start tracking what the divisible number should be, like in an Excel, you just put in, here's what it was and here what it sold for. Do that often enough, you'll actually come up with what the new number should be.
Yeah, you'll fine tune it.
And you're essentially creating an algorithm that way, right? It's a rudimentary algorithm because you put in, the data point of, the sold property and then the new property and the price difference and then the whatever that metric divisional number is.
Sure.
And once you fine tune the divisional number, it should work out pretty close, right? And your outliers then are going to be the weird ones where, oh, well, this one needed a lot of rehab, so it should have just been thrown out, right? Or this one, whatever.
I want to try to do this, and then at the same time, this is probably what Zillow had the smartest software engineers in the world do, right? I'm sure they did some version of what you just described, and then they lost like $1 billion. So
yeah, please don't use Zillow for comps. don't use Zillow for comps. It's such a shot in the dark using that.
Yeah. But anyways, what's up, Sean?
Nothing. It's we're in a good market still in my eyes, but I mean it's fun. It's daily doing this stuff and figuring out, helping people, find deals, get deals done. So it's always interesting seeing what people are coming up with for comps and how they get to their values, but it ends up working most of the time.
Well, we talk about comps a lot, and I think there's a difference between like what's the person's objective, right? Your objective as a lender is to be safe, right? Their objective is, depending on who they are, to anything from, they're optimistic because they want to see that they can make a lot of money and they want to make a deal work, or they're just using inflated numbers because they want to put less down on your loan.
Sure.
Or they are inexperienced and they don't know, right? And
that's exactly right.
So you get a little different things that way that can change, why or how they're coming up with their number. Obviously your experience level alone kind of gives you a heads up because you already know, like, well, if it's selling for more than 350 in that neighborhood, I'd be surprised, right?
Exactly.
So instantly, it's probably 350 or less, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, this one actually maybe could because this is technically the nicest house in the neighborhood or whatever, right? Or in this neighborhood, it's rare for a 3-car garage to come up, but this one has one, and those are actually, they're not, the 3rd-car garage isn't worth a lot, except in this neighborhood it kind of is because if someone wants it, they're going to pay up for it. Right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about garages for a second because, again, we have diminished returns.
Yep.
Right? You thought we were going to plug your business, but we're just going to
We're
just going to nerd out.
Just keep
about
firing away.
valuations
Just keep
today.
firing away.
1 to 2 is huge, right? I think the 1-car garage has a ceiling for the most part in price. Again, this is appraised versus marketable value.
Unless you're in Northeast Minneapolis or North Minneapolis, and then having a garage at all is a good deal, right?
Well, I would say that I don't think people generally. I think you should think long and hard before buying a home with no garage in Minnesota. Because, okay, Sean, tell me, what's the appraisal adjustment generally, or what's your adjustment from 0 to 2 in your median price point?
So here, this is where it gets weird because in my eyes, marketability wins out over the adjustment, especially for a garage.
Totally.
And you're right, it's a diminishing return. But the way it is adjusted on an appraisal, not us doing it, an actual licensed appraiser doing it, is they adjust $6,000 per bay. Okay? So 0 to 1 is still only $6,000. Well, you couldn't build a 1-car garage for $6,000.
Yeah, not even close.
No, your slab would be $6,000, right?
Or 10. Or 10.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the fact that you've got an actual garage. Like, that's huge in Minnesota, right? I mean, if you're in a southern state and you just have a carport, it's no big difference. But when it's an actual garage and you can park your car in, whether people do or not, I've seen too many garages where they're full of junk and not their car, but
don't look at my garage.
the adjustment is still only $6,000 per bay, and that goes up to, I think it's up to maybe 4, and then after that it starts going down in value per bay. Now, are there people who would love to have a 7-car garage? Yeah, sure, I would love to have that big a garage, right? But it's not going to gain the same amount of value over time. Now, $6,000 per bay, even for a 2-car garage, $12,000 adjustment from 0 to 2, you couldn't build it for 12. right? So it isn't as much of an adjustment as I think it should be. And it is definitely a marketability home run to have a garage over no garage.
I mean, I think if we really crunch the numbers in St. Paul and we tried to compare apples to apples homes with from 2 to 0, I think we might see 50, 50,000, which just happens to be about the cost of what it would be to build a 2-car garage right now. They're going for about 50. But man, 0 garage properties can be really tough.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Well, Sean, tell us a little bit about I forget why we got on a garage tangent.
Values.
I used it as an example on something. Yeah.
But what's your background, man? How did you get into lending? And
So I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I grew up in Duluth, actually. Moved down to the Metro in 1995, and have stayed down here since. I grew up in construction, and after college, I worked for U.S. Bank as an account manager in their corporate credit. So I had kind of a background of dealing with a lot of numbers, but I also had the background in construction. I've owned rental properties. I've done flips. I've essentially built homes from the ground up. And when Pine Financial started in Colorado in 2008, they were doing well out there and they wanted to expand to another state eventually. And the owner, Kevin, reached out to me. He actually reached out to me earlier than when we switched over. But finally in 2012, he said, we're going to start doing stuff in Minnesota because it's a very similar market to the Minneapolis Metro and Denver Metro are very similar demographically and size and all that, right? They've got mountains, we've got lakes, but the same type of neighborhoods, things like that. So it was an easy transition over. And because I was here and we already had a background together, he said, if we start doing stuff in Minnesota, I want you to work for us and essentially handle Minnesota. You've got the background for it. You understand it. We need someone boots on the ground to actually do this stuff. So I was at a time where I was like, yep, I'm done working in corporate America. I can't stand people looking over my shoulder. So yeah, I'm in. So we started doing that in 2012 and we're now 13 years later. And I feel like we've got a pretty good presence in the Minnesota market as a hard money lender. So,
yeah, I think you guys are certainly probably the most well-known, if not, who would be more well-known than these guys? Tim?
As far as just notoriety, I think they're number one because, so I think about it, for those who haven't been in the Twin Cities investing world as long, you guys kind of started out by working with the Midwest REIA, right? And so basically the people who founded Homestead Road and their business partner, Dan, can't even think of Dan's last
Dan
name, right?
McCabe, yeah.
Yeah, Dan McCabe.
Dan McCabe.
Yep. So way back then, you guys were involved and have been involved in the Twin Cities ever since, kind of supporting the investor, and the meetup community before meetup.com either existed or was in real estate investing. And so and then you used to have all your intensives and your 1 day or 2 day things, right? That you kind of co-did with, again, Andre, what's his name? Is it Andre or?
Oh yeah. From Homestead Road. I can't think of his last name.
Yep. So anyway, I think that really started it. And the big thing, and I want to talk about this a lot more, for those of you who don't know a lot about hard money lending, is very few hard money lenders will take a chance on a newbie. And Pine is, I don't know that it's your bread and butter. You might do more loans otherwise, but you absolutely take chances on newbies, and very few other lenders will. So you get first crack at people, right? I think that's fair to say. Yeah. When we started out here in 2012, you're exactly right. I was literally going to every real estate event in town. Like, if it had anything to do with real estate, I was there. So for the first, you can even ask my wife, for the first 2 or maybe even 3 years that we were here, I was pretty much going to something 3 to 4 days a week. Like, I was at everything. So if you were at an event, you saw my face, I was giving you a card for Pine Financial,
we tried to get in front of the room as much as possible just to get our face out there so people knew who we were. And then once we started getting a foothold and we started doing a lot of deals with people and they were having success, then it just kind of took off on its own, right? You started getting more referrals, things like that. So, we had a monthly meetup that we did in Roseville. I was at Maria. We did a lot of stuff, and it's paid off over time. But man, when you're first doing it, it's a lot of legwork, and it's a lot of nights away from the family and stuff like that. But it's totally worth it to make sure that you've got a reputation that people want to work with you. So,
well, Tim and I can both relate to that. Is there something about 2008 that Pine Financial was born in 2008? Something about that time that made it like the market open for you guys, or just a coincidence that someone decided to start a business that year?
You could buy a house for peanuts at that time because it was pretty much the end of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah.
That's when Todd Dexheimer started, right? That's when, if anyone knows Genna from the Twin Cities. Do you know Genna?
I know the name.
Yeah. So some of the big flippers from the Twin Cities started in 2008 because, like you said, people could buy them. And so the houses were of course, I'm talking in generalizations here, but many of the houses were in such poor condition because of the foreclosures. People didn't have money to put them into them and stuff, that they were not sellable or financeable as is, right? So they were cheap, in some cases $30,000, $50,000, but they needed work because you couldn't get a regular loan on them. So there was a void in the marketplace, absolutely. And that's how a lot of wealth was made. And there's a lot of really wealthy people right now who started flipping homes in 2008. Yeah. And so to answer your question,
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you could literally throw a dart and you were going to hit a house that you could buy for cheap. And as investors, you couldn't get financed with regular financing, so you either had to have some other option or you had to have cash. And even though you could get the houses cheap, not everybody's got $100,000 laying around to put into one property, because even if you could buy it cheap, you still had to do the rehab to it. So there was a niche there that needed to be filled. And Kevin, who started the company in Colorado in 2008, had kind of been in a hybrid version of hard money lending out there with a woman who, it was just like a real small shop. They only did a few things once in a while, but that's kind of how I got the basis of it. And then tweaked it a little bit and then said, okay, we're going to start doing stuff out there. And they were killing it out there in 2008 because houses were as cheap as you could imagine. And then when they expanded here in 2012, it actually worked out really well because the Colorado Denver market was one of the first ones to tank. California, Denver, all the Florida stuff, Arizona, those were all a lot of the first ones to hit the rock bottom, but they were also the first ones to start coming back. So the Denver market, 2008 was the worst. By 2012, they were already starting to fully recover from it or climb back out.
Yeah, and we were probably more like 2016 almost, right?
Yeah, we were. The way we started to figure it at first was that Minneapolis Metro was about 2 years behind.
Okay, so maybe,
but it could have even been more
maybe
than
14.
that.
Yeah. I guess I'm thinking prices were still good in 16, but they were significantly better than they were the previous years right before that. So I think there's a little bump there is kind of what I'm thinking of, but maybe we're thinking right before. Either way, it's...
Yeah. So it was actually kind of fun because they had already gone through all that in 2008, 2009, 2010. So when we got here, they had already been through that. So it was easy for us to figure out, how this was going to progress just based on the data that we were looking at. And it pretty much did exactly what we were thinking, which was surprising. So, it's been a great market. I mean, we've done, I think on average since 2012, I think we've done roughly about 100 loans a year here, somewhere between 90 and 100. Now we'll do everything from single family all the way up to, 10, 12, 15 unit multifamily. We'll even do some commercial stuff. We'll do ground up construction. It's just, we'll kind of look at everything, but we've got certain things that we want to see to actually take a dive on it, right? We don't want to, The one thing we don't want to do right now for commercial is like office building or just an empty warehouse space that they're not converting into something, because those are a dime a dozen right now and the value just isn't going to be there. So it's going to be harder for them to move it, or it's going to be harder for them to refinance out. So we want to see stuff that's going to be easy for them to either refinance or get out of when the rehab is done on it. So,
do you invest in any rental properties yourself?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I did have some. I've sold them. I sold them when my kids were younger, just because I was cheap and I wanted to self-manage everything. I don't want to hire anything out. If something needed to be fixed, I was the one going to the property to do it. Mm-hmm. So once the market, was in a good spot, I cashed out. But I can't say that, every time I've taught a class on how to buy rental property, I don't kick myself going, why aren't you buying this stuff? You're teaching people how to do it. So, no, I don't have any right now. Always thinking of it, but
what was that time frame like? Can you just, is obviously a real estate investing show, and we love talking about Twin Cities specifics.
Sure.
So could you just walk us through one or two of those rentals? Like, where were they? What did you pay for them? What year?
I think time frame is good on this too, because people don't understand what it was like.
Yeah. The best example for that time frame and what a lot of people dealt with is, we used to live in Northeast Minneapolis, and it was our own property that we became landlord by default with, because the market crashed, and to sell it, we would have been upside down. And at that time, there was a ton of people like that. So we decided to move out of the city to the suburbs because we had 2 young kids, and we could obviously buy a house for a steal at that time. But the house we were holding on to, we had to hold it for a while to get back above water. But that's just one example of a lot of things people dealt with. But other properties were, very similar to that, where they were, something that didn't need a ton of rehab at the time, but, bought it significantly under market value, and then put the work in to fix it, held it for a handful of years, and then decided to cash out after, actually, to be honest, being tired of dealing with it. But that was before I was fully immersed in real estate. And if I was to do it now, it would be a completely different experience for me doing it now than what I had it then.
Tell us about that. What do you mean?
Well, because at that time, like I said, I was one who didn't want to hire a management company. I didn't want to pay for any of that stuff. I didn't want to pay for a contractor to go in and do the work or anything like that. Where now I would be as hands off as possible, right? I would hire a management company. I would just have a contractor go in and knock it out quick. Even though I know how to do the work and I could do it relatively quickly, I don't want to spend the time doing it. I don't want to have my only spare moments at a property swinging a hammer. I'd rather have someone doing the work and then me go out and find another property. And that's exactly what I teach people that are doing fix and flips. Like, people swinging the hammer aren't making the money. It's the people that are finding the deals and grabbing as many as possible are the ones that are making the money.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Can we go back just real quick, just to put a reference time frame on this? I'm guessing, based on what you said, you moved out of Northeast somewhere in 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah, it was 2010.
Right? 2010.
Yeah.
And 2010. Can you talk? So you were in it. So was I. Can you talk about what you felt like landlording was like in 2010 compared to, let's say, the last few years? Because I think it was significantly different. I know people.
Yeah, it seemed in that instance where that property was, it actually seemed fairly easy to me at the time, just because everything was going sideways with the housing market. So you had more people looking for rental properties than ever before.
I suppose by 10 you probably did, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like 6 and 7. It was just awful to be a landlord.
Yeah. By 10, by 10
Maybe.
It wasn't difficult to find good renters,
mm-hmm.
and but that was that specific property. I mean, it was in a great area of Northeast, so it was an easy sell, I guess, to a tenant. But yeah, at that time, it seemed fairly easy to find good renters, to get good rent for the property, things like that. But again, in hindsight, I didn't handle it the way I should have with, all the ancillary stuff, like doing the work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you were too directly involved.
Yep.
Man, I can think back just not the distant year of 2004 for me. Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to learn all these things renovating this house. You get in YouTube, you end up going to Menards every
You're talking 24?
day. I'm talking 2024.
Yep.
What did I say?
Oh, you said 2004.
You said
Oh,
2004.
shit, not 2004.
I'm like, 2004 was a while ago.
I was in 8th grade. In 2024, yeah, I'm thinking, why wasn't I buying houses in 2008, man? I mean, I could have, technically. I was a full-time employee somewhere. But, yeah, I just thought I was going to, get all these skills. But with the YouTube and the Home Depot and the Menards and oh my God, what a freaking waste.
Yeah.
And I could have been I make money on the phone.
Yep.
And lesson learned. But then also I think back about those times, I don't know. So there was something kind of peaceful about you put on a podcast or a great album and you're just caulking and painting all day. Dude, that's great. When you get in the zone of doing something that you're actually competent at, which for me is a very short list.
Yeah.
I think I saw this post. Brandon Turner made this post the other day, the old Bigger Pockets guy, where he's there's 3 stages of wealth. He's one is mowing your own lawn, 2 is hiring someone to mow your lawn, and then 3 is mowing your own lawn.
Yep.
And you get what he's saying by that, right?
Yeah.
Because right now I'm so busy with work and blah, blah, blah. I have somebody who helps with the garden. I have somebody who helps with cleaning, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, eventually you have the kind of wealth where dude, mowing your lawn is enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Working on a house is enjoyable.
Yep.
So
It's enjoyable when you get to choose to do it rather than having it be a chore,
That's
right? Which
exactly
is exactly
right.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. When it's your choice, it's actually relaxing. But yeah, if you're stuck doing it, then you're I got to hire somebody to do this. It's the worst thing ever. But to go back to what you were saying about, swinging your own hammer and doing the work in the house, I think one of the things that has triggered a lot of people in thinking it's going to be so much fun is all the shows on TV about it, HGTV and all that stuff. They make it look just glorious. Even the worst parts of that they supposedly show on TV, they still make it it was no big deal to get out of it. Where if you've actually been in a property and you're dealing with main line collapses or something like that, it's not just let's, take care of it. You're holy crap, this is going to ruin my entire project. There are so many things that pop up, no matter how much planning you do, there's always something that pops up. And if you're not prepared for it, it's going to make it a lot more difficult for sure.
yeah, when did I've never really watched the house shows. I've never watched nothing against them. I just don't watch a lot of TV. But I've never really watched the HGTV flipping shows. I've never watched I really want to get into one of those Netflix Selling Sunset. Is that one of them? My sister keeps telling me to watch Selling Sunset. Okay. But you probably noticed, when did that stuff really take off on HGTV? Was that 2015, 2014? And did you see a noticeable uptick?
I would say it was even earlier than that.
It seems like it was earlier. I don't watch them at all anymore, so I couldn't really tell you. But for a long time, that was Nicole and I's jam. We watched them constantly.
Yep.
I actually got sick of real estate. I mean, I talk about it so much. I deal with it all day long. Eventually, I don't. I kind of wean myself off a lot of that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I think if you watch it just as entertainment, and not as an education, they're fine. But if you're relying on that as your education, you're being taught wrong. You'd be better off going on YouTube and looking at people that are actually investors that are doing stuff and watch them go through all the complete sideways things that happen in deals, because that's the true stuff that's going to happen,
So what do you think the number one, you analyze a lot of deals, right? And you see deals go good, go bad. What do you think the number one contributor to a deal going sideways is from your personal experience?
Not trusting their numbers, right? If you are analyzing a deal And when you figure out that after repaired value, if it comes in lower than you were hoping, starting to cut corners to try and make the deal still work is what's always going to get you in a world of hurt, right? If you're thinking the after repaired value is going to be 400,000 and it comes in at 350, the first thing you do can't be start cutting things off your budget, because your budget is what was going to get you to 350. So if you start cutting things off your budget, well, all of a sudden you're not at 350, it's coming down as well. So it's not trusting your gut reaction initial numbers if they don't work out, and trying to save a deal.
And then let's just assume, like, maybe you could give us an actual example without naming an address, but I'm assuming Pine Financial has like foreclosed on a property before, right? Mm-hmm. So the property passes your sniff test.
Yep.
And you're not fudging your own numbers.
Yep.
Right. Well, can you be more specific into like what is contributing to the point where it passed your sniff test, and yet we're still taking this property back?
Okay, so that's a different scenario then, because what I was talking to, not trusting your numbers, is somebody getting into an individual deal and them not making as much money, or maybe just breaking even on a deal, or maybe even taking a slight loss, right? Because they didn't trust their numbers. They did some type of maybe over improvement or spent money that they shouldn't have, or whatever it ends up being.
Sure.
Now, if you're going the other way and it's something that it looked all fine and dandy when we were doing the loan, but it went sideways and we took it back, the number one reason we end up taking properties back is people take on too much. It isn't that they're doing one deal. It's that they're doing maybe one deal with us, and they're doing one deal with you, and they're doing one deal with this lender, or they're doing 5 deals. They take on too much, and then they start robbing Peter to pay Paul. They can't
manage it.
They can't manage it, right? And all of a sudden, this one goes over budget, and this one goes over budget, and they're like, oh man, now what are we going to do here? Like, I got to start, and then one gets prioritized over the other, right?
They don't have the labor to keep up.
That's exactly right. So it's the number one reason we end up taking a property back is because somebody got in over their head. And very, very rarely is it a newbie it happens with.
That's interesting. I was not what I would have guessed at all. So
Nope.
I was actually going to ask you, like, what is newbie your biggest percentage of deals going bad, but it's not.
No, I mean, newbies maybe are the biggest percentage of people not making what they thought up front.
Sure.
Right? Because they were shooting for the moon or something like that. But here's the thing with that, though, is we're always their second set of eyes before we even do the deal. So if they've got this magical number that they think it's going to get to, we're still getting an appraisal done, and we're still going to be the voice of reason saying, no, it's not worth that. It's actually going to be closer to this. So you got to base your numbers off of this, right? And if it doesn't work, we don't do the loan. But if we get you into it based on a conservative approach, unless something goes completely weird, like COVID, that screwed up a lot of stuff. But unless something like that happens, you should still be just fine and make money as long as you follow what you've initially set up. The ones that go sideways and take on too much are typically the more seasoned investors who, I don't know if it's greed or if it's ego or what, but they start taking on way too much, and they start getting bigger projects, things like that, and they just get over their skis on it, and they can't keep up.
It's tricky, right? Because
it is.
You know a lot of the big players in town, and many of them, in order to grow, then they have to have staffs, right? Mm-hmm. And then they also, in order to buy the properties, they have to have pretty large marketing budgets, right? I mean, mm-hmm. I don't know the exact number, but I've heard enough estimates that I'm guessing it costs anywhere from probably the very low end, 5,000, probably upwards of even 10,000 to acquire a property. Like, right, they're spending $20,000 a month and they're getting two deals out of it,
sure,
right? They're getting a lot more, leads and stuff, right?
Yep.
But something like that, right? And,
yeah.
And the good ones might be spending a little less, but they get this machine going.
Yep.
You're saying marketing right now, right?
Yeah. I'm talking like mostly mailers in that case,
sure.
and some telemarketers and
yep.
maybe some VA work and stuff. And they're spending real money, right?
Yeah.
Like what most people would like to make in a year, they're spending, in a year on just marketing.
Just marketing alone.
Yeah, to get this deal flow. they do this. They get this machine going, and Glenn kind of talked about this when we were talking to Glenn. They get this machine going, and then how do you stop it? Right? He saw things happening, and he slowly wound it down. But if you're right in the middle of it, and you're like, well, I don't want to fire Sean today.
Yeah.
But if I don't fire Sean, I better buy this house because I got
That's
nothing
exactly
for Sean
right.
to do tomorrow or what have you. Right?
Yeah.
And I've got to pay my marketing budget for the month. Right? So that's kind of like it just keeps ramping up.
Yep.
And you end up with these behemoth. The monthly cash needs are huge, right? And so they churn it, but it's actually not profitable deals, and they're maybe even losing a little bit because they're
doing so many
cash flowing through the company. It kind of works for a while, right?
Yeah.
And then interest rates go up a half point, and they're without they're naked, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. The investors that we've worked with who tend to be the most successful are the ones that find their sweet spot. It may maybe started out with the easy, Rambler style fix and flips in the first tier suburbs, things like that, right? Yeah. And then they started ramping up a little bit, but they didn't go past a certain threshold. Where other ones that we've seen that have failed, they just keep going higher and higher, and they start taking on new construction, they start taking on development and things like that. And it's great that they worked up from the bottom, but they aren't ready to take on that large of a scale of things, right? So one investor that I know that I've worked with her for years is she got to that sweet spot and said, we're not going to go higher than this ARV, no matter how good the deal is. We're going to stick with this because this is a product that we know we can move. We know exactly how much it's going to take to get these houses in that condition. And we're just going to stick to our template, and we're just going to keep rolling through at that price point. And if we get something a little bit lower, fine, it's still going to work. But we don't want to go past that threshold because we could get in a situation where it's taking on too much.
Mm-hmm. Getting too big for your britches.
That's
you might
right.
say. And it's one of the most common, just like business failures in general, right? Mm-hmm. People... And there's all this pressure to scale and get bigger and grow. And it's like, there's something to be said for making a number that we all have in our head right now, where we think that's a good amount of money to make, whatever that number happens to be for you.
Yep.
And then make that and then hang out with your friends and your kids and stuff. How often is it that a wholesaler, somebody like Brad, who we had on the show, is ultimately also the one flipping the home? Because it seems to me like there's generally like a separation between the house flippers and then the wholesalers. Or maybe I should ask, like, what percentage of people flipping homes are also doing this marketing machine that you just described?
Of the people I deal with, there isn't very many of them that if they're truly into wholesaling and setting up all that marketing and stuff, very rarely will they take something on. From what I've noticed, right? Unless it's just a home run of a deal and they're like, well, that'd be ridiculous might as well just take this one on and get it and make triple what I could make on a wholesaler or more, right? But the ones that are just kind of, I'm wholesaling, but I'm also, if it's a good enough deal, I'll do it, just kind of like on the fence, and they're not really putting all that work in for the wholesale to that extent, we run into a handful of that, but most of the stuff, when it comes through a wholesale situation, it's a completely different investor than the wholesaler. It's very, very rare that we're actually seeing them be the same person.
If I can add, I think what I see is it's kind of the opposite situation in that, like, anyone who is flipping homes will run across deals that they don't like but are profitable.
Exactly.
They'll wholesale those.
Exactly.
Right? And that's how they hopefully pay for their marketing, or it helps offset their marketing. So, a guy like, or I'm sorry, we'll go with the woman you mentioned. If she stops at whatever number it is, let's say it's 450, and she sees something at 600, like, hey, this is a good deal. This is a 600 ARV, though. We don't do those. I'm going to wholesale it.
Yeah.
Or this is in a city that's like across town from where all my workers are. I'm wholesaling this because it's too long of a drive, right? Or what have you, right?
Yeah, actually, the ideal situation would be if they got a deal and they said, you know what, I've got too much on my plate right now. I'm just going to get rid of this and I'll make a quick 10, 20, 15, whatever on it. I would rather see that than, take it on and then all of a sudden you're getting bound up with too many projects going and you're not focusing on them as much as you should be, right?
Well, and then that motivation inherently, there's less of a chance that just the numbers don't work on the deal.
Exactly.
If somebody who flips homes is looking at wholesaling you a deal and you are going to flip that home, you need to critique that deal extra carefully, right?
Yeah, that's what I've always said with wholesale is if a wholesaler has a deal that you're looking to get from them, you trust but verify, right? Go based on their ARV, go based on their rehab budget, but also run your numbers and see how they line up to that, right? Because in reality, a wholesaler's number one job is what? Get rid of the deal. So they're going to make it look as sweet as possible. Now, that isn't to say there's not a ton of great deals from wholesalers. There's plenty of good deals from wholesalers, but you still have to trust but verify. You got to make sure the numbers work with what you think they are and then move forward with it.
And Tim and I beat this one to death, but also check MLS history because a lot of those wholesale deals were just canceled or expired listings at the end of the day. Maybe like 40% of them.
Exactly.
Well, I think we should talk a little bit about what clients you work with, right? Because there's different types of hard money lenders out there. And I think I'd really like to focus a little bit on the newbie because they don't, those are the people who know the least. So let's teach them some things about what does a company like Pine look for specifically in a newbie, right? Because there's the non, but let's tackle them right now. Because so if you get someone and they have anywhere from 0 to 3 experience, deals in the past 2 years, talk about that. Like, what are you looking for there?
Sure. So I'm glad you brought it up because it's funny that if we're known for that, I find that funny, but at the same time,
well, I know use that because I know you're the only people in town that do it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly
you're
right.
the only people I know that will say yes to those. Everyone else I'm aware of says no. So
well, and that's the thing is we'll get calls and their first question will be, do you work with new people? And if I say yeah, they're like, oh, okay, great. Like everybody's told us no so far kind of thing. But the way we look at it is a new person coming in, we want to see that they've got the same things as everybody else. We want to see that they've got a decent credit score, meaning they pay their bills. Because if I'm going to loan you $300,000, I want to make sure you're paying Comcast first, right? Mm-hmm. I want to see that you've got liquidity reserves in the bank, because once you get into it, no matter how much planning you did, there's going to be overages, and you've got to make interest payments while you've got the loan, things like that. So we just want to make sure that you're in a position to sustain the loan, but still live your life and not be, scrimping every penny just to try and get this deal done. But the third thing we look for is we want to see that somebody on your team has got experience doing it, right? It doesn't have to be a partner. It could be a realtor. It could be a mentor. It could be whoever. We just want to see that there's someone pointing you in the right direction and telling you not really what to do, but what not to do. Because everybody knows what to do, right? You make the house nice, you sell it for market value and make a profit. But there are certain things that, you wouldn't know. Hey, you know what? I shouldn't even worry about this. Or we should, if the neighborhood, if most of the homes in the neighborhood don't have a finished basement, are you really going to need to finish the basement? Or should you just leave it and sell it as is and still make a decent amount? Because you might spend more finishing the basement than you would for the gain in value on it.
Or just
basics like that.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Or just break even and waste the time.
Yeah.
And be an extra maybe 60 days and maybe more with inspections and everything else. Yep. And maybe now all of a sudden you need to have plumbing inspectors and all the other things you didn't have to have if you're just doing lipstick and on the upstairs, right?
Yeah.
So there's all that. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
Right?
Yeah. And it could even be the experience could also be a realtor that knows the neighborhood you're looking in. Because there are too many neighborhoods that if you aren't familiar with it, you don't know that, hey, you know what? If I cross this boundary, it's a completely different price point, demographic, anything. And you may not even know it because it's in the same neighborhood. So when you're looking at comps, you might be like, oh, I'm just across the road from that one that's 400 over there, so mine should be 400. Well, it might only be 280 because of where it's at.
Yeah,
you know?
different school district or what have
Exactly.
you. I used to live in East St. Paul, and in our particular area, when you cross Maryland Avenue, which is only would have been 2 streets over.
Yep.
If you crossed over that second street over, you lost 20% in value.
Yeah.
On the other side of the street.
Yeah,
right?
and if you didn't live in that neighborhood or have a realtor who works in the neighborhood, you would never know that.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the new person, we just want to make sure that they're not going in blind. I mean, we're fine to quote unquote taking a chance on them because somebody's got to help them on their first one. So it's just making sure that they're not going to get in to a situation where they're out of money, 2 months into it, or they just, or they don't know who to talk to or whatever else. We just want to make sure that they're being pointed in the right direction so that they don't get in a bind. And I mean, I've still got clients that their first time being introduced to real estate was coming to one of our classes. And then they started doing deals with us. And I mean, I've got 2 that they've been doing deals with us since 2014. And the one, I mean, they're doing commercial, new construction, development, flips, duplexes. I mean, they're doing everything. But he's been with us since the start because he's just like, you guys are the ones who taught me how to do this. I like you. It's no questions asked when I got a deal because we've worked together so long. So it's kind of fun to see somebody starting out from the start and then what they get to. So.
Everyone's a little different in their process and what they do. So let's talk a little bit about like Hard Money is known for being fast. Mm-hmm. What is a quick timeline for you, or like a quick closing, and what is a standard timeline for you? Like
Sure. So it's funny because it kind of fluctuates a little bit.
Okay.
Mostly dependent on for our rehab loan, because we have a couple different loan products. So the rehab loan is the one that most people use. And that's the one where we'll loan based on that after repaired value, and we'll go up to 70%, and we'll fund as much of your stuff as we can. But we're doing all of that based on an appraisal. So we want that estimated ARV before we're actually doing the loan on it. So that could be what delays it a little bit, depending on how busy the appraisers we work with are and how quickly we can get an appraisal back on it, right? So I would say the standard time on the rehab loan would be about 2 to 3 weeks. If it gets pushed out a little bit, it's more like the 3-week spot.
Okay.
A few years ago, it used to be we'd get it done in 2 weeks, but now it just seems like appraisers are busy with all kinds of stuff because they're not only doing appraisals for us, they're doing appraisals for banks and whoever else. But typically I can get it done in 3 weeks or less for the rehab loan. Now, the other loan we have, we call it a 90% acquisition loan or a 90% purchase price. So if someone has some money to play with, but just not enough to do it all out of pocket, they can do a 90% of purchase price loan with us. They put 10% down, they cover closing costs, and they cover the rehab out of pocket. So they've got way more skin in the game. We're taking less risk because our loan to value is usually much less than that 70% of the end value. So with that one, we'll just do an in-house valuation, essentially running a CMA of our own. But we've seen enough appraisals where we can go just based on the adjustments they make, and we feel comfortable using that for evaluation. And then we'll do that one we can close in 7 to 10 days usually.
Okay.
Could you just tell us, and then today on September 16th, 2025, what would the general, with good credit, if I have good credit, I want this loan, what am I looking at, like points and rate today?
So it could be today, it could be last year, it could be next year. It's going to be the same for everybody. We don't have a sliding scale because, well, 2 reasons. One, it's a lot of work to have a sliding scale to make sure you're knowing who you're giving what to. But the other reason we don't do a sliding scale is if you came and got a loan from me and I gave it to you for this percentage, and then you came and got a loan from me and I gave it to you for a different percentage, and you found out, you'd be like, why'd they get a different rate than I did? And even if you can explain it, it still isn't going to go over well. So we just say a standard rate. The interest rate is 12.9. It's an annual rate, and it's a 9-month term on the loan. but it isn't a 9-month, you got to be in it for 9 months. It's 9 months, no prepayment penalties. So if you're in it for 2 weeks and you refinance out or you sell it, all the better, right? The points of origination are going to be different depending on which loan. The 90% loan, it's 2 points of origination, still the 12.9, yada, yada, yada. The rehab loan, that the points change depending on the size of the loan. If it's under $500,000 loan value, it starts at 4 points origination, but then it will come down by a quarter point each time, down to a minimum of 2, depending on how many deals you do.
So you get some loyalty benefit.
You get some loyalty benefit there. Yeah, but that's the only part that will change is that points of origination. If it's 500 to 750, it's 3.5 points to start. If it's 750 or higher, it's 3 points to start. And then they'll all go down in succession down to 2. And then once you're at 2, you're at that for good. Doesn't matter what deal it is, what size it is, anything else. So that is the one nice thing is people will always know what our percentage or our interest rate is, whether they talked to us last year or this year. It's going to be the same. And the reason it's the same is because a majority of our money is all privately raised capital. Mm-hmm. So we're paying out a percentage to investors. We want to make sure they're getting their locked in percentage that they invested with us. So we just stick at the same rate. And, you know, if the market rate is doing this, all the better for the people that are buying or selling.
Yeah, essentially your cost of money is staying the same, and exactly. I'm sure that you have people leave because it's like, oh, well, I can get more here or whatever, or it's not a big enough spread. But like for the most part, your offering to your investors, and then they take it or leave it, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And the incentive for them to stay with it is because, one, it's tied to a tangible asset, right? It's tied to a piece of real estate. So if the deal went sideways and you've got your money in on this property, like let's say you buy that individual note from us and don't just have it in a pool, you've got that asset now if it went sideways, and you can do whatever you want with it, right? If we have to foreclose on it, you can take and have someone finish the rehab and sell it, make the profit. You could refinance it and keep it as a rental property. You could tell us to just fire sale it and get rid of it as is. Like, you've actually got something there versus if you had it just invested in the stock market, it's going up and down daily. And if you lose, you lose. You know, you have nothing to fall back on if something goes sideways with it. So that's the incentive for the people. Yes, you could make more potentially investing in the stock market or whatever else, but this is a tangible asset that is always going to be there for you if you need it as a fallback.
Cool. If anyone is listening, an accredited investor wants to get in on the money you raise, is that something that you're open to, or is that like a different branch of the? Is there any like public-facing company that raises money for Pine Financial?
No, it's us that does the raising. Yeah, if people are interested, they can go right to our website. It's pinefinancialgroup.com.
Okay. And
there's a link right on there for people that want to invest money, and they can go into that, and they can get a prospectus, and they can talk to Brandon and Monica in our company who do all the capital raising and get all the details. And yeah.
Do you have any details on like average return for investors over the past?
It depends on which fund they're in, or if they're investing in individual notes or things like that. But I don't know if I can even say
That's fine.
Average. I mean, it's probably somewhere around, on an average, probably around an 8% return is my guess. But you'd want to get the most up-to-date info from them that are actually doing the capital part of it. So
before we started, you said you're the only guy in the cities, and so it sounds like you wear a lot of hats.
Yep.
I'd be curious to kind of find out, like, that obviously makes sense then that you'd want appraisals, because like you can't do appraisals and inspections of properties and this and that. So like working with Pine Financial, and you being specifically in Minnesota, what would people expect, like, out of you specifically, right? Like, because I have heard stories that you come out and help people. Well, not help, but like you see a property and you've advised people and help them turn things around. So like, talk to me about that. Like I don't want to give them unrealistic expectations, but what do they get? What could they expect from you? And it's okay to say, well, I can't really do this, or where are the boundaries too? That would be kind of nice to know.
Sure. No, that's great. That's a great question. So what it comes down to is, I'm not going to babysit you through the project, and I'm not going to do all the legwork that an investor should learn how to do, like figuring out their own after appraised value and their own budget and things like that. I can certainly advise you on things just based on experience and what we've seen in the market and what we've seen is successful investors. It costs them this to do that or whatever it ends up being. But what it really comes down to as far as advising people is when we are going to the property, we go to look at it before we actually do the loan, just because we want to have a basis of what the property looks like. Even though we have it in the appraisal, I want to physically walk the property just to see. But then as we're releasing repair funds, it's on a draw process. And I'm typically the one that's going to go out and look at the property. Ideally, I would like to have the investor there to walk through with me, just so I can see, they can explain things to me. Hey, you know what, we ran into this. This is what we did with it, whatever. But there have been times where I've had investors that are maybe newer, or they run into a situation they haven't dealt with before. And when we're at the property, we can kind of walk through it. Hey, you know what? This is what we've seen people do, or this is what I would do, or things like that, just to give them an option. Because as an investor, you're kind of on an island, right? Like you've got your own project going and you're focused on that. You don't really have a lot of people going, hey, can I come take a look at that? Whatever else, until it's a finished product. But when you're in the middle of it, that's when you actually need people to say, hey, you know what, I wouldn't do this, or I saw one down the street do this, you maybe want to look at that or whatever else. But it's just these little things to kind of steer them along the way, which is, they should have that on their team anyway. But if I can help them a little bit just based on our experience, I'm happy to do it.
We were talking before we started rolling about our mutual friend Lisa, who connected us. She's been on the podcast, and she really had the nicest things to say about you. And a lot of it was like what she talked about with us was like she was going through this emotional like heartache over this project, and how like you were more so just like the voice of reason, and I don't know if you remember specifics, but kind of helped dig her out of that situation. So
yeah, I remember little things with that project, but yeah, that's just one instance. But what I tell people is, when you're looking at the deal, your number one thing should be, what do the numbers say? Because the numbers aren't going to lie, right? So what I kind of jokingly say it when I've taught a class on hard money, but I'm kind of serious too. If you call me up and the first thing you say is, I've found this cute little property, you lost me already. Like, what are the actual numbers on it? What are you buying it for? What's it going to take to fix it? What's it going to be worth? If you're keeping it as a rental, what's it going to rent for? Like, those are the first concerns. And then from there, you can say, yeah, it's an awesome property in this great neighborhood for walking to things, or whatever it ends up being. That's all ancillary in relation to the numbers themselves. So that's my biggest concern. And then the rest of it, yeah, it's just, little things here and there to kind of help people, understand that even if things go a little bit sideways, you can dig your way out of it and you'll be just fine, kind of thing.
Do you see a lot of successful flippers work with different agents based on where they're at geographically, or do you see a lot of the bigger flippers using maybe like one listing agent so they can get like a great price, where like you take an agent who's not that busy but put him to work for a flipper and maybe they can pay him 1%. I was just thinking about what you said about not knowing boundaries. We talked about this on the podcast before, but there's a house right on Fairview, like literally 5 houses away from this house.
Yep.
They overpriced this thing like freaking crazy, and they could have done under quarter mile comps and been like, oh, we're groovy, we're totally fine. And they're not. They've been on the market for 90 days probably. Yeah. So I've always just thought I'd love to start a business that's like matchmaking for listing agents.
Sure.
Like if you want, I shouldn't even put this on the internet. I might cut it. But if you want truly a data-based referral to a listing agent, I'm your guy, and my services are free because I get paid on the back end
Exactly.
through the listing agent.
Exactly.
I'm definitely cutting that. But what do you normally see?
Why are you cutting it? Is it? It's not.
Well, because I think it's such a good idea that somebody could take.
You don't
it.
want to give away $1 million idea.
Maybe I won't.
Well,
I don't know. Whatever.
Local Twin Cities investors listen to this. This isn't like I don't know. I mean, if
This
I don't know,
out
if
there forever.
Yeah, I suppose.
No, what I see, the smart investors will use multiple agents depending on the neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of flippers who will stick specifically to a certain pocket and they'll just work there. But there's other ones where they're like, wherever there's the deal, I'll go for it. Like, it doesn't really matter. And you're better off finding someone that works specifically in that neighborhood so they know that niche market. I mean, there are so many little pockets that if you don't know that specific area, you could be completely wrong on your numbers, right? So I see that, but then also the ones that are really doing a lot of stuff, many times I will see either they just get their own real estate license or they hire someone on their staff and just have a real estate agent on staff who just goes out and finds the deals all over, and is just digging the whole time. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag depending on, one, the scale they're doing, and two, if they're sitting in a certain area, if they are bouncing around, it's going to depend. But yeah, if you're going to really ramp up and do a lot of stuff, either you or someone on your team should be the agent to really get a lot of stuff done.
I think it's funny how almost like the bigger the company, the more money they have, the worse the listings look. I'm not going to name any names, but there are some very big, powerful real estate companies in this town, and their listings look like SHIT. It's just quick, like a digital camera from 2007. If anyone can afford $200 for photos,
exactly.
It's this guy. It's so, man, as a realtor, freaking drives me bonkers.
Yeah, that drives me bonkers too. I won't hire anyone who uses cell phone pictures in a listing. It's a good way to cut money. It's a good way to lose sales price real quick.
Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's like with anything that's listed online, whether it's a house or anything else. If you don't have pictures or good pictures, people are skipping that.
Yeah,
they're going right past it, right? And the other one that for years has just drove me nuts was you would get people do all this work to a property and then they wouldn't stage it. They would just list it as this open shell. I'm sorry, but people need to actually have stuff there to show them how this place would look when it's lived in. Mm-hmm. There's too many people that can't walk in and go, oh yeah, I'd put stuff there. They walk in and go, well, I don't know where I would put, whatever. It's not that difficult, but if you can just do that for them, you're going to get way more people looking at that property or way more offers on that property, in my eyes.
Yeah. Corey Wright, one of, I don't know that it was his biggest regret, but one of his regrets that he mentioned was not staging properties soon enough. It took him, it sounded like a while. I don't actually know how long because he didn't say, but in his opinion, too long to start staging properties.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. There was, there's a couple different investors that have worked with us that, one of them was a stager or was an interior designer. But, the stagers were really nice because they would get done with their property, and when we'd go look at it for the final walkthrough, I could have moved in. It was set up and ready to go. There was one time I took my son, who's now a sophomore in high school. He was little. He was 3 or 4 years old and didn't have daycare that day or whatever. So I took him with me to go look at this house. And as soon as we got in the door, he took his socks and shoes off and sat on the couch like he was ready to start living. And I was like, dude, we're not staying here. Get your stuff. Let's go. But that right there just shows you what a difference it can make if you actually make it look like a house that's being lived in,
I've seen it happen so many times. I work with, half of my business is still working with just the retail home buyer and seller single family in the Twin Cities. And we'll look at 4 homes. And then Mrs. Buyer's I really like that last one a lot. And it's yeah, you liked it because it had furniture in it. And they had nice stuff in it. And
exactly.
As an agent, it's part of your job is to bring them down to earth a little bit there.
Sure.
And just be at least, this is a mental... I think there's certain listings that benefit from staging, more or less than others. But yeah, completely agree. If you're avoiding it, especially if you're someone like Corey doing it at this huge scale, what are you? You're stepping over pennies to grab, what's the term?
Stepping over dollars to pick up pennies.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you that some homes benefit from it more than others, and I think the ones that really benefit are ones that have like an odd space, right? Something that isn't typical in most houses, or is this weird corner in a basement or something like that. You know, where if it was empty, people would walk in and go, "That's just like dead space. Like, what would you do with that?" But then you go into another one and they've got like a little card table or pub table or something with a couple of high top chairs, and you're like, oh, that'd be a great spot to, you know, play games or sit and read a book or whatever it ends up being. But had you not had that there, it would just kind of, people would walk past and be like, whatever, that's wasted space, you know.
Big porches is a big one, right? Where like it's not technically finished, but let's set this up really cool and trendy. And then this one doesn't fool a lot of people, but you only have to fool like 10%, 25%. Maybe fool is the wrong word, but like
attract.
Yeah.
There you go.
You have the unfinished basement where it's literally, but it's a cleaner unfinished basement.
Yeah.
So like 1915 to 1950s St. Paul, Minneapolis home, and the concrete walls are painted white and the floor is gray. And then somebody just puts like a rug with a desk right there. And like, that's powerful.
It is.
Know? It really is.
We did that in our home when we sold it. Although it wasn't a desk, but we had like a workout room with a TV mounted in the walls of. Sure. We actually used it that way, so it wasn't really a true, like, we weren't fooling anyone because that is actually the use, but we showed the use in the basement still.
Yeah, even though it was unfinished, you showed that it could be used just as is if you just threw a couple of things down there. Yeah.
Sean, is there anything else you want to cover on this podcast today? I know we're coming up in an hour. I've got like, what I really want to hear is like, is Pine Financial still doing anything regularly to educate newer or experienced investors? Are you guys still doing your meetups and stuff like that?
So no, we don't do our meetups anymore. The meetups essentially stopped when everything shut down during COVID. Like prior to that, we were kind of winding it back a little bit because turnout just seemed to not be as good as it used to be. And any place that you wanted to use a space, their cost was going significantly higher. And we were always big on any classes we did or that monthly meetup. We always wanted it to be free for people. So it was getting to the point where we were spending way too much money in order to just say, yeah, it's free, come on in. So we said, well, let's kind of think about scaling back a little bit, maybe only once a quarter or something like that. And then COVID happened and everything shut down. And then once we started trying to get back into it, we actually started doing it again in Colorado, the monthly thing out there, but they did it quarterly. People just aren't coming out to events as much as they used to. And I've seen that with all the events in town. I think the only one that's even maybe getting close to the numbers they used to get is Minria, but they have a membership, right? So if people have money invested, they're more likely to come to the events, right? But if you've got something where it's either free or a couple of bucks to attend, they maybe are like, I can watch something on YouTube or whatever else. So we stopped doing the monthly thing. We really ramped up our YouTube channel. So
cool.
What we do there is we release a video every Friday. It's all educational stuff. So people can just go on YouTube and look up Pine Financial Group. And we've got, I don't even know how many videos are on there now, but it could be all kinds of stuff, right? So it could be how hard money works, how to, buy rental property, how to, things you should and shouldn't spend money on in a property, all kinds of stuff, right? Anything people are thinking of it, you can find stuff on there. The one event that we still do is once a year. Typically, it's in the spring, like March time. We do our Investor Success Summit, and that's an all-day Saturday thing. And that's the only thing we charge for. I think that one is $39, but it's an all-day event. We bring in all kinds of vendors. We bring in like 8 speakers throughout the day. And it's like from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then we have a happy hour after where people can network and, have a drink with us or whatever else. And inevitably we get a handful of people that end up staying until 10 o'clock at night, still networking and stuff like that. But that's our biggest event. That's the one we put all our focus into, because we'll get, 200 to 250 people come to that for one Saturday. And they're going to get, as much information as you could possibly want in one day. So it's just a good way for people to get out and network. And we found that even after all the stuff, we still get the good attendance with that versus what we used to with the monthly thing.
Do you have like a newsletter sign up or so? Is there some way someone can indicate that they're interested in that? Like if they go on your website, is there like a sign up for information about that or anything?
Yeah,
like
when
that
they go to our website, they can sign up for the newsletter. There's some free information on the website, like different documents, like a scope of work document and maximum allowable offer calculation, things like that. I think to get those, all you have to do is put in your email address, and then you're automatically on the newsletter if you do those things. But we'll advertise everything in there. Once in a while, we'll do a class, a free class, maybe at like a library or something like that. We haven't done as much lately, but it's a good reminder that I should start getting out and doing that more. But those are typically like, maybe a lunch hour class, 1.5, maybe 2 hours at most, that people can come to for free and, learn all kinds of things. So.
Do you buy them lunch?
No, I don't buy them lunch.
All right, then I'm not interested.
I think we could do a valuation style class. Like, we typically have somewhere in the neighborhood of 20-ish people that show up to our events. That's roughly what it would be.
Yeah.
Once it's an evening one, once a month. Yeah. And you're right. It'd be pre-COVID, it was more like 30 to 40, I think. So it is down, but we're happy because it's like the people who come, they're engaged, they ask good questions, and they want to be there.
And we're not spending anything other than like pizza money. So
sure. Yeah. Sure. Those are, that's the biggest thing. If people come, doesn't matter if it's 20 people or if it's 50 people, if they're engaged, that's the biggest thing. The worst thing you can do when you're doing those is you're standing up there talking and everybody's just kind of sitting there staring blankly at you. It's like, I could spit out information all day. I want you to actually engage so we can have a conversation and help you figure things out,
Well, cool, Sean. Thanks so much for being here, man. It's
yeah,
great
thanks
to
for having me,
meet you
guys.
in person. Hopefully we'll do a deal together at some point. And see you later.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
So what are you up to today, Tim?
Hey, well, lots. This is the second episode we've done on one day, and today is Fed Day. So we locked a bunch of loans today, and at least temporarily, rates have went up, just like I had predicted on the other outro that we did. I don't know what order these will come in, but I don't know that that's permanent. But it could last a few days or a few weeks, depending on what was said.
Wait a minute. So. Today
the Fed lowered rates, right?
Yeah,
but interest rates went up. Mortgage rates.
People don't know what happened. It's funny. So we're recording 2 episodes today. So this is the second outro we're doing today. And on the first outro, I asked, "What do you think's going to happen today?" And then you're like, "Oh, I think they'll cut, and then rates will go up, but they'll cut the Fed."
Yeah.
And then in between, it actually happened.
Yeah.
So now on the second outro, we're learning that you were right.
I don't know exactly what they said or any of that, right? I don't know any of the details, but I get alerts in my the service I subscribe to when the market's going bad in a hurry, sends me a text saying lock all your loans, and I got that text. So I don't know all the details, but my service, they only do that when things are deteriorating rapidly. If it's like pretty neutral or a slight deterioration, it doesn't do that.
So how far have mortgage rates gone up since we talked about this an hour ago?
So far as the time of that text, 0.125%. No, but it's the wrong direction, and everyone always expects them to go down on Fed Day, right? Like that's really the main takeaway here. Like it's not all the other stuff. I mean, you can pay attention to all this stuff and really don't, but everyone else thinks the Fed's lowering their rates, so mortgage rates are going down. Well, no, not really. That's not how it works.
Yep, understood. Yep. Well, you've worked with this is probably the second in a series of hard money lender episodes we're posting. I've never worked with a hard money lender ever. As an agent, I guess I have a few times, but you have a lot more experience than me. So what do you think, man? I mean, we've talked to 2 hard money lenders now.
Yeah.
What do you think? Which one is better?
Well, I'm not really I mean, they're just so different, right? I think that if you want I mean, if we're talking about the 2 hard money lenders that we interviewed, if you want, if you are a newbie and want something like that, or in a company that always has money, you go with Pine, right? If you're looking for a little bit faster, if you notice Pine is a little slower in general, right?
3 weeks, you said?
Yeah, 2 to 3 weeks. Whereas, whereas Hadley had said, like, look, I can do it I don't like it, but I can do it in 48 hours.
2 days.
I guess what I would say is this: it depends on what your needs are, because, and that's actually why we, it was good to have both of them, because they both have different specialties and they don't overlap as much as you'd think, right? They're competitors because they're in the same market, but they're not doing the same thing.
Well, maybe this is like nosy or whatever, but he made it public. Hadley said he's got like 2.75 million in his war chest. What do you think Pine Financial's lending in the Twin Cities? 25 million?
Well, he said they did 100 loans a year. So yeah, because they've got to have most of that out for most of the year, right? I mean,
what's the average?
It's not one a month, right? Occasionally they might have someone who uses their money to essentially wholesale a property, right? Buy it real quick, close on it, and then they might have a little of that going on. But for the most part, these things are taking 3, 6, 8 months from start to finish. And so, they probably have to have tens of millions. I really don't know, but a lot.
Well, yeah, if you figure the median or the average, I guess would be better, is 5 months. Well, we do 4 because that's easier math. 4 is a third of the year. So then, so that's 33 loans at a time at a median price of $400,000
plus some rehab funds, maybe.
Oh, plus rehab. So let's just say 500, and this makes the math even easier. 33 times 500, would that be like 16 million?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And some of them, so some deals every now and again for hard money lenders go over a year too, right? So there's some that like that money is out there for a long time. And by the way, if that ever happens to you, they charge extension fees and they're not cheap. And I'm not just talking about Pine, I'm talking about every hard money lender. So if you miss a deadline, you're going to pay more.
Yeah, or maybe call somebody like Tim if you're about to miss one of those deadlines, because there might be able to help. A different way out of it. He can at least give advice, right?
Yeah, if I was going to make one point about hard money, and I tell my clients this, I think this is super important. It's a good analogy, right? And that is this: hard money is a lot like jet fuel. Okay, if you take jet fuel and you put it in a highly tuned fighter jet, you're going to go really, really fast. So if your organization is tuned and you have your stuff together, hard money is the best way to speed up and to make a lot of money, okay? But if you take that same jet fuel and you pour it into a dumpster, you're only one spark away from a fire, right? And so that dumpster fire is real. So you should know your stuff before you get into hard money. I recommend that people if you don't have experience, it's fine. Sean's actually worked with plenty of people who don't, but someone has to have experience. It might not be you, but you better surround yourself with a lot of really great people if you don't have any experience.
Yeah, completely agree. If you're a noob, maybe find a property, find a grandma house like we talk about all the time. They'll pass conventional financing, occupy it.
Yeah, take your time. Yep, exactly. At least learn what contractors you like, right? I mean, when I say fine-tuned, I mean, you don't have to be perfect. Like, I'm definitely not, like, I don't feel like I'm what someone might call dialed in, but I at least know who I'm calling for contractors. I have all that kind of figured out, or at least I know my contractors' flaws too, because a lot of the people I work with are inexpensive and they are not perfect, but I know where they're not perfect and I can account for that and, that kind of thing, right? And so, whereas like, yeah, there's plenty of contractors that will do everything and they'll take their shoes off and they'll be bulletproof, but they're also twice as much. And then that doesn't work, right? So
what do you think your median profit on a flip is over the past 4 years in the Twin Cities?
Oh, well, so so I have...
It shouldn't be that hard to answer, just saying.
No. I have several deals that are 16 to 19,000, and then I have 2 that are 85 and 90. So like out of 5 deals, I made... out of 5 deals, 85 and 90 on 2 of them, and 16, 19. Oh, I had one that was about 35. Those are my 5 that I was personally the head person on. I have a few others that I was involved in where I got a little bit of money, but it wasn't substantial.
Okay. I was going to guess, just only based on what you've told me, the number is going to be like 25 grand. Tell me about the 90. What was that? What was the address?
Yeah. That one was 1822
When do you think it closed?
Lacrosse, 1822 Lacrosse, St. Paul.
When do you think it closed approximately?
It closed a year and a half ago, summer of 23.
Summer of 23. This is not super...
Maybe even fall of 23.
1822 Lacrosse Avenue in St. Paul, sold for $315,000, 2 days on the market, 2023. Randall Carey, who's the listing agent. So this is on the east side in a, let's see, 20, I mean, it was a fine market in August. It wasn't exactly bananas in August of 2023. And it never really is in August any year in the Twin Cities. However, I freaking love this list price. For some reason, I've generally talked that like bracketed pricing is the way to go, and you should have listed it for $300. But something about like $284,900, I think it works for this house.
We got significantly over. I was really pleased with that number.
The floors look great. All the windows are new. You actually physically staged the place, which you don't always do, right?
I do now, pretty much. Although,
really,
yeah, I'm trying to think if there's an exception to that. Did I?
Is it really?
Yeah, no, we did. We staged. Well, okay, so there's a duplex that's half full, and we didn't stage the empty unit.
Yeah, well, and did this place really have a 4-stall garage?
Would I call that a 4-stall? I guess you could, but it would have been tandem parking. It was the most gigantic garage you'd ever seen. It looked like you could fit a sailboat in it. It was super high. It looked like it was built for an RV, but it turns out it was actually built for a boat. It was gigantic. Very, very tall, very large. Lots of electrical and everything in there for you to like plug things in. It was...
Well, so you bought it for...
$155, if I remember correctly.
Well, only $150. You bought it for $150. Maybe
no, it
you
was. You know what? So I
paid.
No, it was $155. Yeah, because what happened was the sales price on the contract was $50, but I paid $150, but I paid $5,000 to a wholesaler, and that doesn't show up.
Okay.
In the records.
So you got about $15 in selling costs. That's very convenient that you sold for $315. That's just nice and tidy. I like that. So you put what, $60,000 into it?
Yeah.
Dang, why can't we do these all day long, Tim?
And that was, I mean, the main contractor on that one, the majority of the work was done by Miguel and his crew on that one. Mm-hmm. You know, that was...
Yeah, so they probably gave you a bid like $25,000 for labor, and then you spent $25,000 on materials, something-ish.
Somewhere like that, yeah. I wasn't, I mean, I was there frequently. I did stop by, but like as far as just like the individual stuff, we got a lot of deals on the materials and stuff. So my guess is the split was a little bit more towards the labor than the materials, because we found some steals on some stuff, you know.
Dude, I've been to why would I have been to this house? I've been to that garage.
Yeah, I never did a meetup there. But yeah, I mean, it's a distinct garage for sure.
Yeah.
Like really, like, not truly one of a kind, but basically in the Twin Cities in St. Paul. That's probably, it's the nicest, biggest garage in St. Paul.
I could be wrong. Okay, what's the other one that you crushed on?
The other one was 3311. Was it Logan? Yeah, it should be Logan.
West Side?
Yeah. And the only reason I didn't do better is that was one of those, that was like roughly a 15-ish thousand. I believe it was $15,000 sewer replacement.
So this is May of 2023, which was a great market.
Yeah,
right?
I took the
really
money
great
from that and flipped it right into Lacrosse. So I did 2 nice ones in a row.
So yeah, you bought this one. Well, the list price was $219, and it sold for $265. So you see a pattern here, guys. These cheap houses, if you can have a 2 in front of it on the list price, and you can make it look freaking fantastic in photos.
The staging's incredible on that property. I mean, I couldn't believe how nice the property looked with the staging. And so everyone who walked in, I just loved it. I mean, that one in particular, it just seemed so perfect.
Yeah. And you've got like great unpainted woodwork. I'm guessing these
cabinets... It had
cabinets...
a cool master... Like the master bedroom was particularly big in that property. So that helped. I mean, for the area, right? Like, let's put this all in perspective. It's not big for a suburban house, but for Minneapolis, it had a great master. It had a good layout. It still had nice woodwork that hadn't been abused. It had a really nice backyard with a deck and a large-ish 2-car garage. So there was a lot of nice pluses on that one.
This was a good deal too. Like whoever bought this, Logan Avenue North. This is the north side, not the west side.
Yeah.
What am I talking about? There's also a Logan on the west side of St. Paul, so that makes more sense. 265. But yeah, cool. Well, hey,
the common thread on both of those is neither one of them were complicated remodels. They were much more modest, so we didn't have to do major stuff. It wasn't a lot of like plumbers and electricians. There might have been just like a little minor repairs, but like it was almost all cosmetics on both of those, and that really is what helped.
Yeah, so you bought this one for $128. Does that sound right? Or is that the wholesaler buying it?
That's about right. I was going to say 135, but 128 could definitely be the number.
Yeah, you bought it for 128. Yeah, that works for sure.
I did not think I would sell it for anywhere near what it went for. I really didn't think it was like a 219 place, but it showed so well, and we did do a good job, and frankly I think we got a little lucky. We did have multiple offers, that kind of thing, right?
But somebody overshot the mark and they didn't have to. Maybe.
No. I mean, they were the highest for sure, but
I'm sure they were the highest.
Yeah, we had some. So I would have made more money. I would have netted more money because we had an offer with no inspection, and with the way it wasn't a full 15 below. So I would have made more money on the other offer. I don't remember. It was probably like a $10,000 difference, and I would have been better off taking $10,000 less on that one. Because the sewer thing didn't come up till after closing, and if you look at the pictures in the property, you'll see there's a gigantic hill. So the sewer was very far down, right? It was like a big dig, and there's a retaining walls there if you see that. And in that particular property, to repair that sewer, they had to tear up the sidewalk. In the city, of course, it's my responsibility to put the sidewalk back, and there's certain expenses and contractors that go along with that. So it was a big deal.
Scope your dang sewers, people.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys wanted to follow along, if you're not watching this on YouTube, where I'm going to like superimpose the photos of everything. So there's just a shout out to subscribe on YouTube, because you could be seeing this house right now. It's 3311 Logan Avenue North, and then the other one was 1822 Lacrosse. So you can Google both of those and see them. I thought people would enjoy that.
Yeah, and I think something that kind of came up, and if we're going to talk about some of this, is like what I liked about those, and what I've kind of found out is my first 3 flips were all really, really inexpensive flips. We're talking like I paid like 90 to 100 grand for them, right? That kind of entry level price. But they also didn't have big potential. The ARV I think is very important. And you've probably heard me talk about this, but I really don't want to touch properties that don't have an ARV of 325 or higher. I really even think 350 is probably the number. Because of remodel costs alone, you just have to, there has to be enough dollars between zero and your end price to be able to afford to pay for all the remodel, pay the seller something, and still have profit and everything else. And when you get in, like, if you compress it, right, if you just think if I take that top number and bring it way down to like 190 or 200,000, even if you pay 90,000 for it, there's just not enough money left over for a big remodel. Yet they need, maybe not the exact same amount of work, but you're still spending 60 grand.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, both of these almost don't fit your new formula.
Correct, but it's also a couple of years ago, right? So like part of that is some expansion over time. Like these both, correct. They both of those don't really fit my new model, but I've learned over time. And even the one I made 35 on, that one we sold for right around that 3.25 mark, right? So I think that's like my lowest end is somewhere right on then. If I don't expect it to sell for 3.25, I'm not really all that interested, because it's just I'm not saying there isn't a chance you couldn't make money, right? Because of course, if you only need to put 20,000 into it, you're going to make money, but it's just, that's not realistic, right? And so I'm not taking it very seriously that I'm going to be able to make money on something that's going to have an end sale price of 200 grand.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the podcast. Thanks again to Shook Rentals for sponsoring the podcast. Remember, check out shookrentals.com. Use our code for 20% off. TCREI 20. Twin Cities Real Estate Investing 20. Please shoot us a subscribe and a like and a share. Thanks to everyone who's been sharing. We've been noticing that more and more of you are listening every month, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Hey, I have a shout out too. I'd like to shout out to Network Title. They're one of our other sponsors, and they've really been helping my clients lately and saving them some money on refinances. So even if you're not using me as a lender, you're allowed to pick your title company if you do it, and they have some really great bundled pricing for refinances. If they're in the show notes as well, but also just look up Network Title and April Bryan and mention the podcast so they know that people are listening and using them.
Yep, cool. Thanks so much, guys. See ya.
That's it for today's show. You can visit the Twin Cities Real Estate Investing.com website for show notes, tips, tricks, and other local real estate investing information. Adam and Tim would like to meet with you. To schedule a one-on-one meeting with either Adam or Tim, go to TwinCitiesRealEstateInvesting.com/schedule.